Hey guys, it's Jessica Furey. Tune in every Monday for new episodes. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Furey. Today we have a really cool guest, Keyen Lage. He is a former NFL player with the Kansas City Chiefs. He is a business coach. He helps to make impossible possible. His business in coaching involves helping to solve complex problems with high achieve leaders, business owners, and just everyday entrepreneurs. Keyen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here. I'm excited and a
Yeah.
little nervous
What are
because I
you
feel like
nervous about?
you're gonna pull some really good stuff out of me because I know the quality of questions that you ask. So the best type of nervous. It's like before a big game that I'm excited about nervous because I know how much is on the line, but there's really nothing on the line. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Did you want to be in football? Did you want to, like when you were a kid growing up, did you want to be drafted for the NFL?
Oh, it was all I wanted. When I was 10 years old, I drew a picture in third grade of me playing in the NFL. And believe it or not, my third grade teacher reached out to my mom after she found out and said, I thought it was funny when Keyen did that, but he did it. So since I was 10, it was something I was, if you want to say manifesting into my existence.
Yeah. And where did it go from there, like as a child that you started to pursue that path?
Well, I think it helped having my grandfather who also got to the NFL have the ability. So it was in my realm of comprehension, which I think with anybody that wants to do anything, it's important to be able to have someone close to you that has done the thing that you want to do to some capacity to be able to make it more real in our minds. So I think having him was something that really helped me with having a greater level of buy-in with knowing the possibility. If my grandfather did it, then I could probably get close at least.
Your grandfather played in the NFL?
He had the opportunity to, so he got drafted, but he decided to start a family instead. But way back in the day, they didn't get paid nearly as much as athletes do now, and his
Yeah.
body was at risk, so he decided to be a doctor and a family man instead.
And so you played through college or you got drafted after high school?
No, so with the NFL, it's not possible to get drafted after high school. I played all the way through college. I went to a smaller school as well, so uh, opting out early wasn't really an option for me.
Yeah, so when you got drafted, this is sort of where your journey began. Can you share when you got drafted for the NFL and what occurred at the time that you started in that career?
Yeah, so just as quickly as I got picked up and signed, I was told I'd never be able to play again. There was a neck injury that I sustained in college that I found, which I knew at a deeper level was true, that was much worse than I thought. And when I got the final results for it by the team physicians, it became a reality that I'd never play again. So the doctor said I was at a risk factor of 3.5 out of 4 to get paralyzed if I went to play. So they couldn't clear me. I never got to play a game. So just as fast as I got there, I was told I'd never be able to play again.
That must have been such a bummer because you were like in your
Yeah,
early 20s when you got drafted.
yeah, 22, 22. Yeah.
Well, that must have been such a tough time. Like, do you remember that time when that was going on? Because when you're 22, your energy is like, I'm on top of the world. Like, this is, like, I mean, just think of the fame or the success or the girls or the attraction or the this and the that goes on when you're in your 20s. I mean, even in your 30s and maybe in your 40s, but during that time period, do you remember like what was going on?
After I got the news
Just the whole
or
time that was
before?
when you got the news.
Well, I cried my eyes out for sure that night. It was a shock because they sent me back. They took me back to the hotel that I stayed at, that I was staying in before I went to go meet with the team. They took me back without telling me what happened because normally they wouldn't take me back to the hotel. They'd have me stay at the facility. So I sat there for about 2 hours waiting until I finally got a call from the general manager of the team where he dropped the news to me saying that he couldn't clear me because of the condition that the physicians found. So after that, I cried my eyes out for probably 2, 3 hours and then went and got myself a cheeseburger and fries and didn't really care about counting anything or worrying about how healthy it was, which I was obsessed with prior to that point. and just sat with it and felt, oddly enough, a tiny bit of relief
Why relief? What was the relief? Relief of what?
from the pressure that I put on myself,
Which was what?
for the intense pressure that I put on myself to get to that point. Like in my mind, the way that I work is when there's something that I want, it's going, I can make it happen. I have a motor that just runs. And so when I had a chance to just sit back for a second and turn that motor off, I felt a little bit of relief. And that moment was very intriguing to me to feel that relief because it wasn't what I thought I would feel.
You know, it's so interesting at such a young age to be able to look at relief as something that's a positive. I can't remember during my 20s to have relief of something and be like, oh, what a relief. I'm so thankful I didn't get that job. Like, I'm so, because I perceive most humans to have an attachment to something, to have an attachment to an outcome, to have an attachment to a feeling, to have an attachment to whatever it may be. And at such a young age, how how is it that you were able to look at relief as something that was positive?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the word attachment. And you're right. Most of the time, in order to get to that place, it takes somebody consuming their entire self with the thing that they're moving towards. But I don't know why or how, but some way I've been able to not fully identify with the things that I do. And I've done this at a young age. So I can relentlessly pursue what it is that I want without losing myself in that thing or finding identity in it. And I don't know how, but that's just what I do. I've always been able to hone in and focus on the different elements of my life outside of just the thing that I'm going after that is my primary major goal. I think that might be part of it with being able to make sure the relationships around me are going well with my family, with my close friends, intimately, making sure that I'm taking care of myself outside of just the pursuance of that thing. So that could play into it a little bit. But that's honestly what I help people be able to do more of is that thing, that which comes somewhat natural to me. And it became very apparent to me that I wasn't as attached to it as I thought when 3 days after I was told I'd never be able to play again, I was moving on to the next thing. And that's when my path began down this other route.
When you were 22, you started to take a different route down another path. Was it instant, or did you take some time to yourself to really evaluate where you were in your life? Because at that period of someone's life, you have such a younger mind, even though sometimes I feel as if the drive is there, the enthusiasm is there, the motivation is there, but the wisdom just comes with the experience. And often the experience just comes with experience from itself, whether it's financial experience, success, or opportunity, any of those things that are going to help create that experience of what it is. So what was it during that time period that you started to just pivot into a whole other realm in this career?
Yeah, well, I think the big takeaway that I had was if I really set my mind and heart to something, I can get it. So that's the positive of me not getting to be able to play a game is that I technically did make it right on paper. So seeing that, it really changed my perspective in how I approached what I would do moving forward. So I didn't think of it from the perspective of what do I feel like I need to do or what do I have to do or what would be the safest thing for me to do. It was what do I want to do? Now that football is done, now that this big chunk of the pie has been taken, what do I want to fill in that space with? And I was a finance major in college and always said my backup plan was to be a financial analyst. But when it became a reality, I knew it was not the route for me. So I quickly X'd that off and said no, and just decided to ride my bike to the library every day and read for 4 to 8 hours. And I eventually stumbled upon a book that one of my mentors had recommended to me, one that was helping me with my physical composition with getting to the NFL. And there's a book called The Biology of Belief. and talks about being able to create your own heaven on earth and the science behind how we can manipulate ourselves into operating in a much healthier, higher frequency through conscious choice and decisions. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And so through that, I said, well, how do I apply this method of creating my own heaven on earth? And how do I help other people to create the same thing? I said, I want to do something that's going to give me that outlet. And the closest thing I could think of, which I never would have thought in a million years before I was told I'd never be able to play again, I would do, was to be a personal trainer. I knew the physical body really well. That gave me an outlet to be able to help people in a more deep capacity. And from there, it expanded, but that was where my path took me next, was being a personal trainer.
And you were a personal trainer for how much time before you started to transition into the coaching?
For a year and a half, but I had already began transitioning. I already got a little bored after like 6 months of personal training and needed to expand beyond just the physical external body. And I started to get really obsessed with the internal health side of things. So I transitioned into helping people with autoimmune conditions and digestive disorders due to me fixing some of my own issues, which was gas, bloating, heartburn, issues with constipation, that kind of stuff. I wanted to figure that out for me. And I somehow started helping people with Hashimoto's and arthritis and colitis and different digestive disorders, and got excited with that and quit as a personal trainer and scaled the program that I had for people with those conditions. After about, like I said, a year and a half, 2 years of personal training, I was working on this on the side while I was doing personal training. I went full in onto that and did that for about a year and got a little bored with that and was like, well, if this isn't the end all be all, using the external side of health and the internal side of health, what is? Well, mental emotional health is the leading factor in determining how the external physical body and the internal physical body work and function beyond just the food and the exercise. So I started to get obsessed with that for myself and for some of the clients that I had within the nutrition coaching. And that's when I really decided to go all in on the more mental emotional stuff. And for the last 4.5, 5 years, I've transitioned the types of things I'm helping people with based on what I'm most excited about. But that's where the transition happened.
What is something common that you often see come up for yourself when you're about to start something new? What is something common that comes up? Is it something that's confident, or is it something fear? What is the initial thing that comes up for you that you take the chance to take the next step? Whether it's a positive or a negative, what is the first thing that comes up for you? Is it because boredom is something that's just there? And I've had many years in personal training prior to being in real estate, and I'm open to telling someone how taxing it is. It's very taxing in many ways. But what was it, something that came up for you that you were like, I'm going to go do something different. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that.
It's a genuine childlike curiosity that I've maintained connection with. I think through different levels of programming that people have, or their own limitations that people have, they lose connection with the childlike curiosity that exists within all of us if we stay connected to it. And for me, as I've pivoted and transitioned, I've always stayed connected to that childlike curiosity, and I'm always open to hearing it out, and I listen to it and I just follow it. And it always starts with me doing a little bit of a research, maybe reading a book, maybe watching a YouTube video about whatever it is that I'm noticing myself being excited about. And then I just move forward from there. So it's being able to stay connected to that childlike curiosity that I notice myself being inspired to move towards something else. Then I just start to move towards it.
And you work with a lot of high profile, high achievers, business leaders on a day-to-day basis, correct?
Correct.
What is a common thing that you see come up with them that you guide them through overcoming that?
Blind spots because of emotional dysregulation caused by past experiences that have happened. So oftentimes they can be sabotaging elements of their relationships or sabotaging elements of their business, sabotaging elements of their own health based on their own inability of handling situations where they're emotionally dysregulated. And so I deal with central nervous system regulation, with being able to help them emotionally be able to handle the things that come up so they're not sabotaging those situations and be able to operate in a more abundant state where they're not making decisions from a place of their emotional dysregulation, but more so from a place of openness, excitement, and curiosity.
What would that look like? Fear, trauma, reactiveness, being
Yeah,
able
as
to
far as
be unsure.
the symptoms associated with it,
Yeah.
yeah, oftentimes paralyzing. Depending on the person, sometimes it's paralyzing in regard to their inability moving forward. Sometimes it's frantic action, which a lot of high performing people tend to have, which is they don't struggle with taking action towards things, but because they don't, and they're always moving forward, very type A individuals, they can take frantic action, which is just action that's not really contributing to the bottom line of the success that they want, because oftentimes they're avoiding something or running from a feeling. So when I get really down to the core of what it oftentimes is people running from feelings. They're running from not wanting to feel something, whether that's failure or embarrassment. we go in and I go in and help them be able to process those emotions and get comfortable with those emotions so they're not taking actions to not have to feel them. And so oftentimes if you are finding yourself paralyzed or you are finding yourself taking frantic action that you're not really knowing why you're doing the things that you are, but you're just doing it because that's what you've always done, is just do a lot of things. It can be because you're running from feeling a certain emotion. So if you can go in and find the emotion that you're running from, then you can adequately process it and stop taking action or stop not taking action from a place of avoiding the feeling or the emotion.
And what is it that you do that you go in there and you pull this out of them? You're taking it out of them. What is the specifics of you going in there? I don't believe it to be like a one-time thing. I believe it to be, I'll use your word, an uncovering, an unmasking of something that is either and it's either connected to fear, shame, resentment, or trauma, or some sort of emotional pattern that has come from many, many years of things that didn't just happen yesterday. Like it didn't just happen yesterday. It's been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Behind everybody, when you get to the core of it, that is oftentimes those 5 things that you mentioned are what is revealed, for sure. What was the question that you asked me within that?
The
I
question
lost
I was,
track when I was hearing you
yeah,
speak
no,
on those things. It was on point.
because what is the uncovering? What is the unmasking? What is it that you're going in to pull out of them? What is it that, what, as specific as possible as you can, what is it that you're going in and helping these individuals uncover, unmask?
Yeah. Going in and creating a space where they can healthfully process whatever is there, whatever stories are there that are keeping them in that space, whatever they're telling themselves, the lies that they're telling themselves, and somehow incentivizing them in the context of our interaction to really let go of whatever is there. Most of the time, the people that I work with are people that are the people that everybody else goes to. So, not very often are they in a position to fully release whatever's actually there. And I think due to the nature of the person that I am and what I've done, and me also being someone that operates at a really high level, I create the space for them to feel safe and confident enough to confide in me and trust my guidance. So I think there's a lot that goes into that equation as far as how I get them to be able to open up in the way that they do, and then insert whatever needs to be inserted, the new programming that helps them operate at a higher level but it's really a process of softening them up a little bit and feeling so they can feel safe and confident in expressing those things to me.
Do you tell them to do like workouts? Do you tell them to meditate? Do you tell them to read? Do you tell them to write the feeling that they're looking at and take inventory on that feeling? And then let's come back next week or later on in the week when I see you to uncover what that exactly is. What is the specific things that you work with them to do?
Nothing. I don't tell them to do anything. Nobody has any specific homework when they work with me. And I think that's a cool part about working with me. I think that's why people do like to work with me, is because outside of the context of our interaction, they don't have to do anything. Now, there are things that come up in the context of our sessions that is inspired action, not based on running away from something, that they will execute, not because they have to, but because they will now that they're inspired to do so. But all of the work is done in the context of our interaction. So from there, it's them just noticing the things that they're doing differently, not having to impose anything upon themselves in the way that they operate. And now I don't really know fully. I have some speculation as to how that works. That could do with energy and frequency and that type of things. But no, I don't have them have to do anything. They just notice the things that they're doing differently outside of the context of our interaction.
I think that it's so cool for you to approach it that way. And I'm sure maybe individuals would maybe say, well, what qualifies you to do this work? What qualifies you to go in and do this work with people? What experience do you have with it? And what is the experience that you have had with it that you've had to look at those parts of yourself that now you've healed? And that's my word, is that you've healed those parts of yourself to come out the other side and help others.
Hmm. So your question is what qualifies me to do this?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. I don't really know if I'm well qualified on paper. I mean, I'm a finance major. I've never taken any certifications.
Mm-hmm.
I've maybe done a couple courses, but not on this work directly. I'd say it's more a gift that I've been able to have from God and be able to harness it and sharpen it based on my own inspirations and the things that I go through and that I'm excited to learn more about. I've had a lot of therapy and coaching in my life, though. I've worked through a lot of things myself. And so I would say that I always will be my number one client. That's why people continue to come back to me in different seasons, because I always find a way to somehow continue to evolve within myself. I'm obsessed with that. That's just who I am, is
Mm-hmm.
my own evolution. And so because I'm obsessed with my own evolution, I guess somehow I'm able to help other people evolve and emerge into deeper levels of who they really are as well. So I'd probably say it's a gift of mine that I've been able to harness through following certain levels of inspiration that I have. And then now I think what qualifies me is my insane amount of testimonials. I've never seen anybody else have 60 plus video testimonials of people raving about them in a one-on-one container. So now that I've gotten a lot of real life experience with it, my testimonials and people that I've worked with speak for themselves.
He does have a lot of testimonials. I've seen him. And he has testimonials on his website you guys can check out. But I think I'll use myself as an example. I am changing, I have changed career paths. And I'm using myself as an example because I'm just going to create a scenario around someone that you would work with as a client and someone who is newer in a business. And I know that, and I know that a lot of underlining things that people do comes from a place of fear or not being enough, not being worthy enough, not being successful enough, not being this enough, not being enough of something. And
I don't always agree with that, though.
And why?
Because oftentimes it's really an absence of knowledge that they attribute to not being enough because they don't know any other answers. And now I think there's a unique equation that goes into someone being receptive to truly hearing something and not just listening. But what I've found through my experience, oftentimes, because when people say that they don't feel like they're enough, I don't believe them. I don't believe them. And through not believing them and helping them not drop down into that space of not being enough, I somehow am able to give them the knowledge and understanding that they need to be able to move forward in what they want. Because it's really just programming oftentimes. It's what they've been taught that prevents them from going after getting what they want based on their own life experiences that they can chalk up to not being enough. But in reality, it's just responses to their past life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can go in and process through some of those life experiences that told them something other than what they needed to do to get what they really want, and then plug back in the proper knowledge to get them what they want. And it doesn't have to be as heavy of a thing, because I think that can be really heavy. I think it can be a little lighter than I think a lot of the mainstream spirituality or coaching can make it.
Yeah.
But you disagree, hit me with that.
I mean, I still do think that it is an underlining thing, that it's an emotion that's underlining that does come up for people because they may be up against patterns that have been, maybe they were born where people were saying things to them. Not every person is grown up in a healthy relationship. Maybe they got into an intimate relationship where the partner wasn't as supportive or as open to hearing them in a way that's been healthy. But going back to using myself as an example, I'm an avid meditator, and I talk about it openly on my podcast because I don't speak about the amount of like healing work that I've done around it. And I do use the word healing, but I have spoken about it openly because I do believe that when people take that approach to whatever it is that they're trying to do, they will uncover parts of themselves that will increase confidence. It will increase success. And a person who is making a 180 in a career change, one of the things that I've had to reflect and identify is changing the perception of work that other people have seen me do in a whole other world of doing something differently, and almost having to separate something within myself that I'm trying to leave. And I know that because I speak about it openly, something that I'm trying to exit. And because it's providing something for me in my life right now, how is it that you work with individuals like yourself? I'm a very highly motivated female entrepreneur, a business owner as a woman. What are the things that you uncover with individuals like myself that are either making these career changes or they're looking to scale a business in a different way? What are some of the things that you could communicate over with the people that you work with?
Well, I think I first have to get, I know I first have to get to an element of truth. Let's say, for example, within you, I first have to really understand if what you're saying that you want is what you want. And so contrary to what maybe a lot of coaches do, which is hear what people are saying and then try to get them what they say they want, I more so challenge the shit out of people and what they say that they want to make them have to convince me long enough that it is what they want to then convince themselves to adequately move towards it. So oftentimes it's me really denying, let's say the opportunity to say that it is truth, that that is truly what you want. And through me pressing you in rejecting what you're saying, it forces you to go deeper into your own understanding for what it is that you want. So you're able to more adequately explain it verbally by arguing against me to convince me that what you want is what you want. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make a lot of sense. I have enough clarity around what I want because I do spend that time. I'm not perfect with a lot of it. I'm still uncovering parts of it, but every time that I get to talk about it openly with other individuals within my line of work, or maybe not within my line of work, a lot of it is just my friends. I have friends in my life that are not in my career, and I actually like that. I like that because for me, I can say whatever I want. And it's funny, when we spoke a couple weeks ago, you and I spoke about you got out of a relationship about 2-3 years ago, and it was really challenging for you. Do you remember when you were sharing that with me? It was like really challenging.
Absolutely.
And you were going
Very.
through a really tough time. Now, it sounds as if that you were still doing this work within that time frame of this breakup going on, right?
What do you mean when you say this work? Like while I was working
The
with
coaching,
people, I was
the
still
business.
going through, yes, until the breakup happened. And then I intentionally took a month off and away and fucked off in Brazil.
Like fucked off, you just going out there and just having sex with like random girls.
No, 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 no. I meant fucked off. Like I said, I'm done coaching
Oh, okay.
for a month and I'm going to go explore this new place
Okay.
and see what that's like. I didn't speak any Portuguese. I had no
Okay.
idea what it would be like,
Okay.
and said, I'm going to take time away from coaching, and
And
did
what
that
did you
for a
do?
month. It's a great question. I went to the beach a lot. I tried to learn the language. I worked out while I was there because I wasn't doing social media either. And I told everybody close to me that didn't want to, there's no communication at all. I needed a complete reset and to be in my own space, my own energy for a full month. But then after that month, I jumped right back in.
What was the understanding that you started to have? Because I know I love that you do this line of work now. What was the understanding that you started to have about women?
After working with a lot of women,
Mhm.
that women are a lot tougher and also a lot softer than I may have thought.
How do you find,
I can expand on that if you want me to.
please? Yes.
Yeah. Softer from the standpoint of there's an equation that goes into building trust with women that most men don't understand. And it's a unique combination of many things. Now, obviously, every woman is different, but it's a unique combination that is required to be able to access deeper levels of softness. And once those levels of softness are exposed, women are incredibly, I would say more than men in regards to the men that I've worked with and women that I've worked with, are more resilient in being able to handle more tension. Because when I'm in the container with people, I go in. Like that's something very different I think about me is there's no holding back. There are things that I say in the container are ruthless. If people heard the things that I said, they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? Right. But I build that trust. That's how I'm able to do what I do. So when I am in and that trust is established, the things that I say, when the ego that women have oftentimes is much less than men. And so once that safety is established, their capacity to be able to take in information and advice is incredible because the egos tend to be a lot smaller than with men.
Do you think that women are more submissive? That allows them to be more, that they're allowed to, that they're able to consume the information that you're giving to them?
I would say by nature, yes, they do have a generally greater capacity. And I think that's a superpower to be open to receiving. And I would actually attribute a decent amount of my success to an element of my ability to submit and surrender to something that I want to learn about or get better at. So when I'm in football, I was the first person to surrender to my coach and asking questions that I didn't know. There was no ego that I had in that space. I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to be able to understand more. And so I think naturally women have more of that, which probably makes it a little easier for women to learn things because the ego is generally a little smaller and they're able to submit a little more into their feminine ways with whatever that is they desire to go into. And I think it's a superpower that if properly tapped into, which is what I helped a lot of women be able to tap deeper into, get them a lot of what they want.
And what is it that you hear that they want? Success in their business, a successful relationship, self-sufficiency, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, confidence, poise.
Most of it, when I really boiled it all down, is the ability to not have to worry about money in doing what they want, whatever they feel very passionate about,
Mhm.
and have a man that they can confide in and trust more than anything to be able to help support them in their ability to do that.
Mhm.
That's what it generally boiled down to.
And what is a limiting thought, belief, energy, anything that you see that's common in women that comes up?
So they can't trust men. And
Oh,
whether that was with their dad or
yeah.
the male figures in their life,
Yeah.
or because of accumulation of past experiences with
Yeah.
men, that it all boils down to this absence of trust. Which I think oftentimes with women, I had a conversation with a friend the other day about this. Female friends oftentimes give the worst advice. And I find that a lot of women aren't held accountable for their own mistakes and mishaps. And so it's at their detriment that happens. And so being able to go in and adequately say, hey, this is your part in the equation. It's not just these men. There's things that you're doing and the way that you're thinking and the way that you're functioning that are causing this to happen. I think I did have a very unique way of doing. And that's why I found that these women were very open and receptive because what I was saying was true. So it's being able to shift their relationship with men, which oftentimes has caused them to overcompensate in embodying more of a masculine way of being, where they're a little overly self sufficient in a way that repels a more masculine man that they desire. Because a man strong in his power, most of the time, is not going to compromise on the leadership role in a relationship dynamic. And so being able to help them nestle into a place of being able to trust a man that truly is operating in a divinely powerful place, they can nestle into that safeness within themselves to be able to be the woman they really want to be for the man that they love.
Do you think that working with men, you see that there is it that they're intimidated by women who are self-sufficient?
No, because as men that, and keep in mind, self-sufficient is different from living in a place of constant drive toward what they want, neglecting the soft, intimate side of a relationship. So a woman can be self-sufficient and pay her own bills, but there's a difference between that and living in a masculinely driven state that a masculine man on his path and purpose doesn't want or desire.
What does that look like specifically? Because self-sufficient,
Not being able to lead. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say
Could help
that,
me.
yeah, because when you said that, that men, um, excuse me, men have leadership skills that I feel as if that are a little bit more defined than women because of just men have different traits than women. And how I define self-sufficiency, because I connect to this on a day-to-day basis through meditation and through conversation with some of my closest girlfriends, is that for me, I define self-sufficiency as physical, financial, spiritual, mental, emotional stability, all of those things. To be able to provide those things all for myself. I can always show up for a partner, but I need to meet my own needs. I need to meet those needs. And that's just been through my own experience, through relationships, knowing that either giving your power away, not being strong enough, emotionally strong enough, not being able to emotionally regulate your own emotions and reactions to things.
Yeah,
And
I hear what you're saying, but there's an issue with the modern day woman that she becomes so inundated with fulfilling her own needs that she loses touch with the nurturing element that makes her woman. And men that are pushing and making things happen and know how to live in a place of masculine drive,
mhm,
they don't want to be around energy that is absent of the nurturing essence that women inherently have. And so in the process of becoming immensely self-sufficient
Mm-hmm.
and independent and
Mm-hmm.
catering to her own needs,
Mm-hmm.
she loses touch with what is the beautiful thing that makes her woman, in that she has an incredible ability to have a very tuned in perspective of where the relationship is really at, contrary to men, and have a level of love and care for children that men don't have the capacity for.
I believe that, and I also don't completely agree in a way, because I when I say self-sufficient, I also know qualities of myself that I do show up for a man or a partner. I just am very in tune with those things. I'm very in tune with that. And I do know from my own conversations with friends of mine that maybe that they were all in different places and maybe they're single, but that I do know that they do bring specific traits in that
Would
way.
you be open to going into your own specific situation? Because I feel like you're kind of dabbling in talking about yourself, but I'm also kind of talking general, and I want to be able to be more specific based on what you're experiencing. So I'm talking generally, and then you're talking about your personal experience,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
get on the same page. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
do that, let's fucking do it. I'd love to if you're open to it, but I want to make sure that you're open to it.
But the general thing is I I bel I can only answer from my own experience, and like, yes, I know that women are very nurturing in ways, and I do know women that are very like, they're very scared, or they're very not wanting to be connected with the man because they do want to be that self-sufficient. But the way that I'm hearing what you're saying, and the way that I'm not disagreeing, but the way that I'm viewing it is that I don't know, I just believe in the softness, like, because I know that softness within myself, so I can only speak for myself. I don't necessarily want to speak too specifically about my situation. Like, maybe I would be open to doing that, like, off of my podcast. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, of course.
It's just sorry, guys. Like, it's lit. Like, Christian would definitely love for me to do it right now, but it's not happening. And maybe like two people that listen to my podcast that know, but I don't think that I want to like open up in my experience. But I do share, like, I've had a relationship with somebody in my life who is very near and dear to me, and I love them so much. I have a lot of emotions that I'm still working through. That's really making me take care of me, because of the emotion that I've had to experience, and the emotion of not being with this person, not knowing the outcome of my relationship with this person, sometimes not feeling safe, not,
So not a very pleasant experience, that
I think,
relationship that you're referring to, that you've
well,
had to.
I would say pleasant. I mean, in some aspect, pleasant. I would say that maybe it's more of like, I just am very connected to my own healing, and that healing is being seen and feeling safe and being able to say something and know that when I say something, it's going to be heard and respected, as opposed to being put down or discarded. And when
Yeah.
I view a man and a woman, when I view a man and a woman in a healthy relationship, I may not agree with every single thing, but I hear you and it's respected. And that's the way that
Mhm.
I am starting to see healthy relationships. And is that something that you see? Is that something that you have in your experience with your fiance? Like, what is it that, now working with men on the other side of your business now, what is it that you see with them?
Well, if you don't mind, we could finish up
Sure.
with women here.
Sure.
And oftentimes what I see, and this is, this is men and women, but because there's a lack of understanding with true value systems and what a woman might want and her overall barometer of what a good man is, she'll then bring a man into her life that's destructive, that she then responds to that in a way of thinking that she has to change or be more of something that she inherently isn't. But that's not true. She doesn't have to change the essence of who she is. It was just her barometer for who she was attracting bringing into her life was wrong. And so this is oftentimes what I see with men and women, but in particular, we talk about women. The women that I'd worked with is they take on these adaptations to a certain situation, but it wasn't who she was that was the problem. It was the barometer that she had in her radar to determine what was a good man and what isn't. And so most of the work, a lot of the work that I did was being able to rewire that barometer to be able to understand, okay, what truly is safe and what is just my programming responding to that I feel attracted to.
Mm-hmm. 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 I agree with you. I agree with you. And that is where patterns, trauma, just the combination of what feels normal, what feels comfortable, what is maybe what not you specifically, but what somebody has grown up with, those emotions. And I mean, I'm connecting to those things in my own life on my own time because I just am into it. I'm very into it. And I don't, I would never put down in anything because I grew up in a very in a very healthy in somewhat I was able to get things that I needed in one form or another. I may not have gotten the emotions that I needed to get that sometimes I hear, but I'm an adult now and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Like for me, I'm okay with it because I have my own path and I have my own way, but I am just observing it from a place of a relationship standpoint to be like, okay, that I noticed that I do like to have that emotional connection with a man. Like, I know a lot of people, they have those emotional connections with their parents and mine's very different. Doesn't mean that I don't love them less or love them more. It's just and now how I show up. And I in that form, um, I show up in a more loving way. When it comes to my parents, I show up in a completely loving way. I show up in a compassionate, empathetic, loving way because I just do. I choose to make the choice of seeing them as somebody that I love and I give back that love. And that's the way that I just have been approaching those things. But when you mentioned before we came on the podcast that you're now working with men, now switching it to the other side, what is the things that you see with men that commonly show up or commonly show up in relationships with women?
So I'll make it more specific because that helps me in my mind dial in more of a better answer to you. So relationships with women, that often happens with men. Well, I do see a big response to the red pill community. If anybody doesn't know, it's like a big
Matrix?
movement. No, it's a movement of men that are rebelling against the, let's say, the masculinization of women in modern culture. So they're taking a much more abrasive approach to being the captain and leader, and he needs ultimate submission from his woman, and there's not really a strong emotional relationship, but it's more of a dictator style of, I'm going to become immensely successful so I can be a conqueror over the woman that I'm with. Okay, that's kind of the gist of it. And so as a response to that, because it's all over social media, I mean, it's kind of like the Andrew Tate movement. That's inspiring a lot of that behavior in men. And so what's happening is men that are very personal development based, that are always wanting to become better versions, they obviously are inundated with that information. And so they're going a little too far in one direction as far as being that conqueror in their relationship. And it's emotionally disconnecting them from the woman that they're with. So being able to go in and provide some deeper understanding into, hey, being this dude that believes he's the man because of the external world that he's created, not because he's emotionally in tune with himself, you're never going to be able to connect with your woman in a way that you need to if that's how you're living. Because, yeah, I can see how it would make sense if you're just focusing on short term relationships.
Mm-hmm.
and trying to be the alpha dude that a woman wants to sleep with. But as a man, if you want any type of continued relationship with a woman, you have to be able to know how to emotionally connect and operate in a way where it's a union, not a me versus you type of operating. And so I bring them back to the other side where
Men.
they can still operate in their power as a man, but emotionally connect because they now understand themselves at a deeper emotional level, which is oftentimes why they can't in the first place.
Men.
Yeah, correct.
And do you think that, and then I'm going to ask these with 3 different things. Do you think that men are driven by sex?
I think men are driven by sex. I think men operating at a very primitive level are overly consumed by the animal that exists within them. But not all.
Do you think that
I think if a man is connected to a greater power within himself, a divine path that he has in his time on earth, that becomes a greater priority, not so he can get laid, but so he can fulfill the mission that God has placed on his heart. And I'm not saying that that man can't also be a sexual being, but I think there's a different way of operating that exists beyond the primitive desires that we have that
in a
we can
healthy
be
way?
in touch with.
In a
Correct.
healthy way.
Correct. I think a man that is not connected to his greater path is obsessed with the pursuance of sex.
Do you think that men are driven by power?
Yes.
How so?
Well, I believe how we're fundamentally created as humans and why we become do you want to say, supreme species, like the ruler of the world per se, and over all other animals, is our unique ability to move forward and expand and constantly evolve. And so naturally, pursuing power causes someone to have to continue to evolve and become a greater version of themselves or more adapted version of themselves. And so naturally, as a byproduct of nature, we are driven by power, not for the sake of power in and of itself, but I think at a more fundamental, deep level of the desire to evolve and to continue our species. And I think that's why women also are right now driving toward becoming more well-rounded versions of themselves, which I think is a beautiful thing because it's causing men to have to rise in their ways of operating as well. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a fundamental thing that exists within us that will propagate our species into continually evolving.
So how do you have powerful, we'll just say powerful men, high achievers that you're working with? How do you have them disconnect from maybe an ego, maybe hurtful, to something that's more fruitful?
Well, it's not about the pursuance of success. It's more about what really is their deeper sense of desire. Their let's say God give. I believe every man has a God-given path that he's able to tap into, and that's what I call a deeper level of inspiration within him. And oftentimes, the successes that men have is not because of a deeper divine calling within them, but because of a lack or a desire to gain approval from someone that push them down the path that they're on. So I believe success is a beautiful thing that every man should pursue, but not at the expense of the path that he's following. So what I do is I connect them to, I would say, the divine path that exists within them, where they're truly fulfilling let's say, level of fate that God has planted within them, and disconnecting from the egoic pursuance of success to fulfill some type of lack or insecurity.
And that would be where your deeper work comes in. And where do you think that men are driven by money? Do you feel as if like maybe men that are working with you, they're not financially in a place that they want to be? Do you think that they're only driven by the outcome of making
I think
specific
that's a
amount of
lower
money?
level. I think that's a lower level vibration. I think being driven and having your actions be happen because of like driving towards money, I think is a lower vibration that's operating from a place of disconnection. Money is just a currency that exists as a byproduct of taking specific actions. And I think it's very limiting from the soul standpoint. So what's honestly impressive to me is someone that's able to connect to their divine path and make a lot of money doing that. And so I think that's not impressive, the pursuance of money and making money, because it's only fulfilling one element of their life's path. So I think it's kind of weak to be ran by the pursuance of money.
And if somebody's not working with you on a one-to-one basis, whether it's a man or a woman, what would be a specific thing? And I do want you to be specific. What is a specific thing that you would invite someone to do on a day-to-day basis that would connect them into those things, whether it is a position of power or success or money or a woman feeling more complete, more whole? What would be something that you would ask someone to connect with on a day-to-day basis? What would that be?
I would say cut off environmental or external influences. Like, do your best for a week to cut off any type of influences that are being imposed onto you.
Negatively.
Positively too. Positively too, right? Because you talk about positive, people could be encouraging you to go towards something that isn't really what you want. And I've worked with women that follow a lot of red pill information, Andrew Tate
What
type
is this
style
red
stuff.
pill? What is this
I
red
told you
pill?
already.
I
I
have
told
no,
you.
but I'm
It's
saying
like the
like,
Andrew Tate. It's like the Andrew Tate movement. It's like what he's generally inspiring within men. And so there's women that consume that content of trying to be extra feminine and extra submissive, but that's just not inherently who they are. They're not that way
and
in
that
their
would be
inherent
a whole,
operating.
yeah, and that would be a whole other conversation of sometimes I think that
Yeah.
women maybe take that route because they think that they'll be able to get all those things from men. And then it's just, it's like,
Well, it
it's
wasn't necessarily that. It was more so that she was just feeling a lot of shame surrounding how she was. So we just had to release a lot of the external influences that were imposing onto her how she was thinking she needed to be. And from there, we were able to get more connected with where she really was so we could understand where she truly wants to be, separate from the imposing forces onto her. So maybe she did actually want to be a little more one way or another. We'll say her soul was desiring to be a little more one way or another. But as long as there was these imposing forces onto her saying how she should be or needs to be, then she wasn't able to stay connected to what really was true inside of her. So I would encourage now more than ever, because of how easily we have influences at our fingertips all the time, all the content we consume, it's all of it's influencing us in some way or another.
Mhm.
It's disconnecting us immensely from a deeper place of who we really are and who we
Mhm.
want to be.
Mhm.
And so everybody, I would say, spend an extended period of time where you're cutting off all influences that are people that are reminding you of who you are, or encouraging you to be any type of way.
Mhm.
And that's also social media driven as well. And now that might be very difficult to remove yourself entirely from human interaction or from
For
anything from
sure.
the outside world. But
Yeah.
I think that's one of the fastest ways to deeply connect with who you are and who you want to be. Get
Mhm.
away from all other influences. But the
Mhm.
problem is people are deathly afraid of being alone. And so if you could sit by yourself, let's say in meditation, in a space away from all other influences, you can begin to understand deeper levels of who you are and who you want to be.
I'm a huge advocate of, well, one, I have a morning routine that allows me to not touch my phone for about an hour to an hour and a half.
Same.
And another one is, and I talk about this on other episodes, it's like to disconnect and disassociate for at least a half hour a day, because it's like half hour, that's 30 minutes. Sometimes you sit in LA traffic longer than 30 minutes. But I just think that like, and when you said to sort of like disconnect, where it's like some people have families, they have significant others, they live with partners, they have a team of people, they're a business owner, they have clients, they have this. And I think that's where when you do start small with half hour, 45 minutes, like it really does connect to that internal place. Can you share, let's just say in like less than 142 characters, we'll do like a Twitter thing of your business module, what would that be?
My business module,
Mhm.
like my business framework, or how I do things,
Whatever
could
it
be a
may
little more
be.
specific.
Whatever would be a description of the work that you do that would be inviting to someone
Mm, mm.
to work with you.
Well, I say I'm the person that gets people what they really want, and I connect them to the path that is uniquely fit for them, that will ultimately lead to the greatest level of fulfillment within themselves
I think that's
and
such a
earthly
cool,
success.
and I think that's such a cool gift to be able to like give back to others and be in service. And I just feel like so thankful. I mean, I was
There's nothing
introduced.
better.
Yeah.
There's nothing else I would be doing. That I have the most incredible life in the world being able to do what I do. It's fucking unreal. I still
Fuck,
can't believe I get paid to do this shit.
that's amazing. I
It's
mean,
amazing.
guys, I was one of my peers knows Keyen, and he was like, you have to reach out to Keyen. He's so into personal development. He's so into all the stuff that you talk about all the time. And I would honestly say, like, I learned so much from even having him on like today's episode. And I'm so thankful that you're here and I was able to connect with you. I like to ask all my guests 3 questions before that they leave. What is a non-negotiable in your morning routine that sets you up for the day?
Mm. Well, first thing I want to say thank you for all your kind words. I really appreciate it. And this has been an absolute pleasure being on here with you. You're so lost in the conversation in a beautiful way that a lot of hosts don't have the capacity for because they're so in their head. And so I really appreciated your ability to be able to be so present. And I'd say that's probably the fact that you put so much intention and attention into being able to operate in the present through your practices. So it's a testament to the things that you do.
Thank you.
So thank you also for being able to be so present with me and facilitating such a great conversation.
Thank you.
But to answer your question, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask
Ian
because
is going to promote the fuck out of this episode and he's going to promote this podcast and what
morning
is,
routine.
yeah.
I don't have I have I have a unique perspective on morning routines. That for me, a morning routine is simply a series of maybe one, two, maybe three things that put me into a state of excitement. And so every season of life, I go through different things that light me up. So when I lived in Brazil, what lit me up was taking a walk on the beach, having an acai, and dancing to a song that I really liked. And that's what put me into a great state to jump into my calls. So what I do is I tune people into what's exciting for them right now. Like what are some small things that feel exciting or put them into a good state that they implement in the morning. Because I don't like it to be too overbearing or I don't like it to be too disciplined, I should say, but more of what feels inspiring and right. And maybe that is meditating for 20 minutes. Maybe that is journaling for 20 minutes. But oftentimes I hear people that come to me that are very into the personal development space doing those things, but they're doing them because they're telling themselves they have to do it. And so they're not actually receiving the positive energetic boost that they need going into the day, but more doing it as a discipline for whatever reason they're convincing themselves that they have to do it. So it's more of letting people tune into their own arsenal, me tuning into my own arsenal of the different things that I know are possible for me to do, that I know put me into a good state, and then doing those things. Right now, meditating for 20 minutes in the morning is one of my consistent things that I've been doing. But there's also been seasons where I don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Can you leave the listeners one piece of advice or suggestion that they can apply to their daily routine, their relationship, or their business?
It goes back to what I talked about earlier. Take time to disconnect yourself from the influences of the outside world.
I'm going to try that. I mean, I try that for maybe 24 hours. What are 3 qualities of yours peers would say about you?
Wow, this is a good question. What do my peers say? They probably say I'm very disciplined. They probably say I'm very kind. They probably say I'm an absolute savage. Because I can be very kind and disciplined while also being able to fully say whatever the fuck I want to say. So I think the combination of those 3 things is a good summation of me.
Cool. Where can people find you? Plug yourself.
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. Official Keyen is my Instagram tag. And I'm sure you'll put the spelling of those in the show notes because they're not very common names. My name.
My editor and Christian take care of those things, but they certainly will take care of it. And I will make sure that those notes are being noted. Thank you so much, Keyen, for being here. It's such a pleasure. Thanks, guys, for being here. You can follow me at Jessica J. Furey, at Jessica Furey Real Estate. Follow, support, like the podcast, and let me know what you guys think of Keyen's work. And I will set you up with all the information in the show notes. Keyen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.